I want to recognize first the public commenters, which I know some of my colleague Councilmember Vang did as well, especially those that have been directly impacted by the use of this equipment. I want to recognize how hard this must be for you and just thank you for your engagement throughout this process. I've seen you consistently show up at Law and Ledge, at community meetings, and I just really want to thank you for your engagement and something that must not be, and I assume is not easy for you. So I want to start by talking about process and just begin by reminding us all that the Police Commission already offered to work with PD on outreach for this policy. Instead of opting for this casual cups and coffee style that really isn't conducive to meaningful engagement, I also want to recognize that it's my understanding that the police have not been at the last 2 police commission meetings, which really robbed them of the opportunity to ask further questions or have further discussion on these items. And I point that out because, Chief, I want to appreciate what you're saying in terms of your goals, but there seems to be a disconnect. And I think it's really important that our goals be matched by those actions. And I also say that because requiring PD participation in commission meetings is one of many recommendations that have yet to be agendized at our council from the commission from, I believe, 2 years ago, despite repeated requests by some of us for the last year and a half to have those be agendized for action. Further, in addition to the requests about linking general orders and soliciting additional community feedback, I want to remind my colleagues that at Law and Legislation, we actually specifically asked for the police to meet with the sponsors of the bill to address their concerns. That was specific direction from Law and Ledge, and after repeated follow-ups, that was denied by the police. They decided not to meet with the sponsors, and I believe that that type of conversation, again, in the spirit of meaningful community input, could have avoided a lot of the discussion and outstanding issues that are still here today. We're at day 168 of a 180-day process in the law. I wish that this had been brought to us a couple weeks ago when we crossed the 30-day mark on notification so that we weren't asking for something to change in the future and we actually had time to refer this back and actually see the changes that we're discussing tonight in print so the public could comment on them. Because again, I want to remind, as many commenters said tonight, that this is a floor, not a ceiling. And I'm going to take the liberty of reading in full the legislative intent language from this bill. It's not too long. The acquisition of military equipment and its deployment in our communities adversely impacts the public safety and welfare, including increased risk of civilian death, a significant risk to civil rights, civil liberties, and physical and psychological well-being, and incurment of significant financial costs. Military equipment is more frequently deployed in low-income Black and Brown communities, meaning the risks and impacts of police militarization are experienced most acutely in marginalized communities. The public has a right to know about any funding, acquisition, or use of military equipment by state or local government officials, as well as a right to participate in any government agency's decision to fund, acquire, or use such equipment. Decisions regarding whether and how military equipment is funded, acquired, or used should be given strong consideration to the public's welfare, safety, civil rights, and civil liberties, and should be based on meaningful public input. Legally enforceable safeguards, including transparency, oversight, and accountability measures, must be in place to protect the public's welfare, safety, and civil rights, and civil liberties before military equipment is funded, acquired, or used. And the lack of public forum to discuss the acquisition of military equipment jeopardizes the relationship police have with the community, which can be undermined when law enforcement is seen as an occupying force rather than a public safety service. I say that in full because I do think we're losing a lot of this intent in the minutia of the discussion. But I also want to recognize that when we voted on this policy in December, it was a 7-2 vote. And so I'm not under no delusions about where my colleagues are, although I would love to hear people changing their minds, but I'm not hearing that. I need to say that just because something is in use does not mean it needs to stay in use. And while I know that we can imagine a variety of scenarios where something may or may not be necessary, I have a real question on whether this policy's goal is to protect human life and to be as cost effective as possible. For example, having armor-piercing bullets that we have no memory of using is an issue for me. Having rifles that were obtained from the military that have been converted to AR-15s for our use at $280,000 apiece is another issue for me. But I will not exhaust the list. I will list for the record several specific issues that I've already highlighted for PD so that it is in the public forum. First, the General Order 420.01, use of police vehicles, that is referenced in sections 5 and 6, does not exist. There is no policy listed in the RUC, and that needs to be fixed before a final policy is updated, which the police have told me they will address. General Order 580.17 regarding LRAD still includes warning tone use. I appreciate, though, and want to state for the record police's commitment that they've already reprogrammed those devices not to be able to generate warning tones, and will change that general order to reflect that change in policy. I will also note that General Order 580.12 regarding less lethal weapons has significant blackout sections. I understand that the law allows for redactions under specific circumstances, but I do not agree from a policy perspective that that is in the best interest of public oversight. So I had this whole example in my brain of all these changes I was going to ask for, and just to make the, I do want to appreciate the reporting clause in here because I want to list a specific one here. Armored vehicles in the annual report, which are the Bearcats currently. This report says that they were used 79 times in 4 months. But all that the report says in terms of what they were used for is support of SWAT and patrol during critical incidents by providing greater safety to community members and officers beyond the protection of a shield or personal body armor. That is woefully insufficient. 79 times. I know you have the data, you just gave the stories, and I disagree with the assertion that you need additional budget to give us the information that you already have. I think this is really a matter of better communication and using some of the $47 million we've given you in the last 2 budget years, but definitely some of the other resources to ensure that the Excel spreadsheet that I understand you currently use to collect this data is available to the staff who write the annual report so that we can actually understand what 79 instances mean in the field. But in the end, I was going to propose a lot of reductions and changes to this ordinance, but I'm here worried that my tears will betray me because tears are seen as a sign of weakness. But right now, this is an expression of my incredible frustration because I think once again, we have missed an incredible opportunity to have a discussion about what this means for the community, to hear this pain, to make real changes, to be open to potentially not using things like tear gas in our communities. This is something that I don't think we should be shying away from, this conversation and every step of this process. Again and again and again, repeated offers were made, repeated requests were made, and they were not heeded. And so I'm just feeling at the point that I don't know how this is fixed right now. I hope that the language, Mayor, that you added helps. I really do. But I'm a no vote on this. I'm not going to second your motion, Councilmember Vang, and it's not because I don't appreciate your effort. I don't know how we ever get past the point that we're at as a community if we can't have these conversations, if we can't be open to this. And I'd really like to ask, as an additional follow-up here, OPSA, we gave her about $500,000 for a Truth and Reconciliation process a year and a half ago. I don't know where that is, but if anything, tonight has illustrated to me just how critically important that work is. We've got to be able to talk about this in a real way, and I'm so frustrated by my experience really trying to engage in this process for the last several months that I'm just a no vote. Thank you, Mayor.
We